Hello, welcome to my daily stream. So, so much is happening. I feel like I'm constantly overwhelmed at the moment. Largely, I guess, because of the this list. Lots of people are talking to me about it, and I'm updating it, and I've got a few emails back and forthing with people. The emails that I consider to be quite important, so I want to take my time with it. And those conversations invariably lead to articles that I want to write. So I'm like frequently mocking up quick drafts of ideas that I want to write about. I'm doing more tweets, interaction. So I've just like got lots of little balls in the air. So no work has been done on my crowdfunding campaign, which is meant to be my priority at the moment, which is always the case. For some reason, I always deprioritize this. It's almost like I'm allergic to asking for money or help. Definitely, I know that shouldn't be the case, and I shouldn't do that, and I should just get on with it. But also, what's happening now is really good. It's great to get the attention and people seeing my name and just generate some sort of recognition, reputation in the space. It's helpful, but it's all useless if I don't turn it into something. And I think that's been one of my biggest handicaps so far, is that I'm still just some guy that pays attention. Until I have an organization with branding and with registration and with money, until there's an organizational backing, I'm just some guy and no one gives a shit. It seems to be the state of affairs. So that should be a priority. Now, one of the ideas that has always been in my head, and I think this plays a big part into, I guess, the uniqueness of me working on the uniqueness of the Socratic web and how I got to it and why no one else ever seems to reach the same conclusion as me, and I struggle to bring people on the journey, I think has a big part to do with my background being molecular biology and philosophy and history and philosophy of science. All these different areas of thought have come together in the Socratic web. And one of those is a basic understanding of immunology. And I really don't get immunology, but I understand what it is and how it works and the molecular nature of it. And most importantly, what I understand is how biological systems kind of work, kind of flow, this equilibrium state that they use to regulate things. There's nothing in biology is black and white. It's always rates and flows and probabilistic disbursements and things like that. Diffusion is like, such a central thing. Something that's so chaotic and random is just like the primary basis for so many things in biology. So when you have like a decent grokking of that sort of reality, I feel like that sort of pervades the way I see lots of things, like the way I see society and stuff. When people say, oh, all blah 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 is blah, it's like usually not. No, it's usually, there's a trend and there's population movements and the way that flows, and that gets pushed back from other populations that respond to the change and they don't like the change. Really, honestly, understanding the concept of an equilibrium, I learned this in like year 11 chemistry. When I first learned it, I just fell in love with it. I've never forgotten it because it's such a counterintuitive but beautiful concept, that a system in equilibrium will resist change to that equilibrium. And an equilibrium is not, you have 5 people and 5 people, look, they're balanced, therefore it's an equilibrium. That's not an equilibrium. It's if you have 2 groups of people and one person walks that way a minute and one person walks that way a minute, and the 2 groups of people will stay the same size because the rate of changing sides is the same. But if you have 2 people walk that way a minute and one person walk that way a minute, then over time you'll end up with everyone on that side. There's no equilibrium. It's changing. It's a very simplistic explanation. But biology uses a lot of that stuff all the time. Now, because of that, what was it? Like 1 minute something. Yeah, get past that. Because of that and the philosophical bend, memetics has been something that I was a fan of Richard Dawkins from early university. Loved The Blind Watchmaker. Read The Selfish Gene. The idea of memes. Whether it's strictly valid or not in a scientific sense is mostly irrelevant. It's just a way of thinking about ideas, and I think the analogy is perfectly apt because genes aren't solid either. Again, this the lay perspective on these things is that like a gene is, particularly when we can look at ACT and G. Genetics sounds digital. It's on or it's off. It's an A or a C. And so we think of like a gene is a gene. A gene codes for something, but it's not. A gene is, you don't know how long a gene is or what's a gene, what isn't a gene. It's just sort of a term we give to a collection of bases that sometimes code for proteins, sometimes don't. Can be mutated, so they vary. It's not simple. And similarly, memes, like what is an idea? Because you can get gene clusters, you get genes that piggyback off each other. One's really important, and so another little gene happens to be next to it, and tends to be copied with the successful gene because it's just in the proximity. Things like that. So similarly, you have ideas where shitty ideas get to piggyback on the back of popular ideas, and I'm not going to come up with examples, but blah. So the point is the idea of an immune response to bad memes is perfectly validly analogous to a genetic biological response to invading genes. And at the end of the day, bacteria and viruses are invading genes. Like, yes, they're whole organisms and there's toxins, and that's why they're often dangerous, but those toxins are created because of the genes in the bacteria, and viruses are pretty much just genes that replicate themselves using your machinery. Anyway, the point is I think it's possible to turn something like this video, but this is a great example because Kurzgesagt is fantastic at summarizing things. I think we could basically recreate this as an analogy, or overlay it with descriptions of mimetic infections, memes, ideas, misinformation, bad ideas, dangerous ideas being introduced into the ecosystem, which would be the internet, and trying to infect the minds of people. But in this case, the minds would have to be the cells, and ideally the meme would actually be viral. So this video is bacterial because the viral infection is much more analogous to a meme. Virus is just pretty much pure DNA with a protein shell, but it's really focused on the DNA, and it works usually by injecting the DNA into your cells, so it's getting into your brain, and then your brain becomes the replication machine. So DNA, the genes go into the cell, take over the cell's machines, and then uses the cell to produce more copies of the DNA, and that's what mimetics does. It's what they call virus of the mind, and of course we use the phrase now, things go viral, but that's the very close, very valid analogy in my opinion. So anyway, this is let's see if I can do this.
System is breached.
So in this case, he's saying rusty nail has opened your skin up, and the skin is the first layer of your immune system. It's a barrier. So in that case, not reading anything would be your skin. Just not encountering the outside world is your skin. You don't encounter any ideas, therefore you can't be infected. But once you go to the internet, you start reading ideas, you're being exposed to all these ideas. If you can read and you have access to information, then your skin's down. You've got mimetic invaders coming in trying to change your mind. And so the first level of response are the macrophages. Now these mimetics are sort of big, dumb, kill everything sort of things. They just, anything that comes in, they'll just sort of absorb it and start eating it and digesting it. I say dumb because they're not adaptive. They themselves don't necessarily know what they're fighting. It's just, it's not self-destroy it. They do other things like increase liquid and whatever. So I think we can liken this to when a new mimetic infection comes in, when a new idea, when a new claim that's false, then the internet automatically straight away has a response, and that is skeptics, journalists, casual bloggers, domain experts. The second an idea comes across their path, and by the way, it's worth quickly mentioning, notice how many bacteria here. The second bacteria enters the body doesn't notice for a while. It takes some time for the bacteria to multiply and spread and become large enough for the body to go, oh shit, something's happening. Exactly the same here. If I go and write a piece of misinformation and I publish it to my blog, no one cares. It's only after I then share that to some social media and I get lucky enough to have someone with 1 million followers retweet it or share it or whatever, and suddenly 1 million people are seeing it and they get excited about it because it gets into their brains and replicates, and they start spreading it, and so it becomes viral in that way, that suddenly there's something to react against. And so the first line of defense is always this sort of like non-organized, non-structured response to the people that just happen to see it, that go, oh, that's wrong, that's not right. And it's usually the domain experts, people that really actually know what they're talking about on that topic, or communities like the skeptic community, like people that are just aware of the way misinformation works and topics related to it, and even then, like I say, the skeptic community, but they only work within a specific area, not all topics. So there's probably like equivalent communities in each sphere of thought, maybe. But otherwise, like journalists also can react to this, but again, it just feeds into the realm of domain experts. Hobbyists, the other one. The point is, it's just the individuals, the people that see the content, that go, this is wrong, and they go and write in their blogs, and then they share it on social media, and it has an effect. Like they respond to some of it, they kill some of it, but if it's really viral and keeps being spread, that article just doesn't. Usually the rebuttals, the critiques, the corrections are not nearly as exciting or engaging as the misinformation that they're responding to. Because of the misinformation, which is already going viral, it has to sort of begin that process before people notice it to write it. So it's self-selective. It's like, well, this is good. This is good mimetic infection material. Like, it's good at being an infection. And so usually when that happens, in the case that we're interested in, these hobby bloggers and domain experts just can't possibly compensate for the growth and spread of this viral mimetic infection. So yeah, they don't necessarily start signaling to others, but to some extent they do. They sort of can reach out to journalists and larger networks and say, and try and call in some bigger hitters, people with bigger profiles, bigger reach, bigger publications. So like, yeah, it's one thing for someone to be an expert in agriculture and responding to articles about genetically modified organisms, and they write in their blog and they publish it, and yeah, they've got their 1,000 readers or whatever. That's one thing. But if this new claim that's going viral everywhere starts getting a lot of traction, that person can then maybe reach out to journalists at some of the largest publications or media outlets and start interviewing with them, or give them the story, or tell them, you've got to run this, you've got to cover this, and start getting it out on national news. That's kind of perhaps what we just saw there, with a macrophage communicating to another cell, like, this thing, we've got answers to this. So he's saying this is deciding whether it's bacterial or virus, and so in this case it's bacteria, but ideally we want to video this for viruses. And then those cells go and talk to what are we talking to?
Process, and only a quarter survives. Difficult and complicated. Here, billions of helper and killer T cells are waiting to be activated. When T cells are born.
So helper and killer T cells. I guess like the killer T cells would be like the media, the big media organizations, and so you get the domain experts one way or another get in contact with journalists and say this is a story and this is the answer and you've got to go cover it. And then if the killer T cells, the journalists with the powerful reach, go, you know what, this is a good story, then they go and they hammer it with national level publicity, and then that can go and kind of reach the minds of the public to block them from being infected. That's kind of the analogy. And these are producing the antibodies. Antibodies then attack. So that'll keep them going and producing more antibodies. Antibodies bind to the thing. Now I'm losing a bit here. I think this is already going too long. Because I'm just riffing and just trying to figure it out. One of the things that I figure the Socratic web kind of fits in with is the memory cells. Because like once this is all played out, you've got this claim and these rebuttals that have been made by the domain experts and then by the journalists, and through this whole process they were talking to each other. They're sort of figuring out the best counter argument, what works the best against the thing. And somewhere along the line, you kind of want to figure out what the best is, but then also make it stick to the misinformation. And so I feel like memory B cells are a way of, once you've done that, every time it rears its ugly head, the Socratic web remembers it. You know, people can see it and go, oh, that's right. Someone in the system will see the claim rearing its head again and go, we've already seen this, and then just go find a previous example of it, see the rebuttal, and then just connect the new version of it to the old rebuttal, and it's like, okay, then it's done. Just kind of like a memory B cell, kind of like antibodies. But one of the key points of all this is that, yeah, the Socratic web is not like, oh, here's the solution. It's just bang, kill all infections. It's just part of a process that doesn't work without all the other stages. It doesn't work without the domain experts caring enough to notice and respond, and the skeptic community doing that, and the people taking it to the journalists and getting high-profile people or journalists with massive reach, or media companies to cover it and put it out to the public to actually like to resist the misinformation. All those things sort of need to happen anyway, and as part of a natural functioning thing. But then there needs to be a system that really uses those components and structures it so that when it comes up again, when people encounter it for the first time, because you've always got fresh minds coming together that haven't seen it, that weren't there for the first time, when they encounter it, they need to be immediately given the helper, the memory cells, the fact that this has happened and there's already been a process and a correction needs to be immediately available to them. They shouldn't have to go through the whole process themselves and act like it hasn't already been debunked and confronted and dealt with. So that's that idea. Bitcoin's going down again, making me very sad. It stopped out my one long position, which was otherwise doing really well. But it stopped it out at a small profit, except for slippage. I don't know if I actually profited in the end. But at least it didn't stop out at a loss. So yay for small victories. But I'm back where I was before, which is it has to go up. It has to go up to at least here before I can even open a short. I can't even short it down here, even though I'm currently in a position where I've got a 2 trading below a 1 on the 4 hour. That's a really strong position for me to open shorts. But I don't have enough equity to short, so I'm just kind of screwed again. Without closing the other longs I've got, but I don't want to close them down to the low point and risk losing that. Because I'm not going to get liquidated where we are. I've got enough equity for that, but just overextended. So many drafts. An article I haven't finished reading. Tom from Eden sent me a list of projects that they support that could be included in the list, but I've gone through them, and most of them are like fact-checking organizations or systems that help journalists fact-check. And this relates to what I was just saying with the immune system thing. It's like these are all incredibly useful, incredibly important parts of the thing, but they're sort of the substrata upon which the systems that I'm looking at work. They rely upon. We need the journalists to do that work. Even for the AI machine learning things, they train them off the answers that these people come up with. It's crucially important, but it's like the wrong level from what my list is focusing on, which is the systemic scalable solutions that take all of this work and organize it or present it in a way which gives the public a way forwards. Same with Verificado. It looks to me like another organization to fact check things. The Global Council to Build Trust in Media and Fight Disinformation. And it sounds perfectly in line with it, but from what I'm seeing of it, it's like an organization of people trying to help turn the public around to trust the media again and figure out what they can do to make that happen. And so it's more like political sort of activism-y, internal dialogue, institutional support stuff, which is crucial and important, but it's also kind of the status quo. It's like, yeah, that's what should be being done, but it's not a systemic, scalable solution responding to the issue. It's hard to define exactly what I mean there, but hopefully it's clear enough. Still haven't fully read that. Could look at Wikidata to see if we can convert this list into data-based collaborative enterprise, and if Wikidata is the best option. Otherwise, someone suggested just a Google Doc, which maybe Google Doc, yeah, might be a good option. It's complicated because just the demarcation, the taxonomy of what fits where is infinitely complex. There's no obvious way to do it. And I've got to leave in about 2 hours to go pick up Carmen from the airport. And then I'll be gone for probably 3 hours. I'll be back, and it's dinner time, and then it's bedtime. So guess how much I get done today? Oops. There you go. Okay, that's all. Thanks. Bye.